So what do I think are the 10 greatest films that received 0 Oscar nominations? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. This is going to be a fun Oscar Top 10 video. Films that didn't get in at the Oscars. Movies that are classics, old films, newer films that I think are extraordinary. And it's like, they got nothing? Like, not a single Academy Award nomination? Are you frickin' kidding me? So yeah, I might get kind of upset in this video as I go through the list. These are 10 films I love with a capital L, and it is astonishing to me that on Oscar nominations morning, every time out, they got nothing. Let's start with number 10, Groundhog Day. So this is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's hilarious, it's romantic, it's so original, ingenious in its construction of the screenplay. Bill Murray's performance is a comedy all-timer. And Groundhog Day, it did well at BAFTA. Like, it got in at BAFTA. I think it won screenplay there. But at the Oscars, Groundhog Day got nothing. And it kind of pisses me off. It's like, what? I know Groundhog Day came out early in the year. It was released around Groundhog Day 1993. So that's a long time to go before the next award season. So I kind of understand that. And it's a comedy, of course, right? The Academy doesn't recognize comedy all that often. But I do think Groundhog Day is brilliant enough. It's so good. It should have at least gotten into screenplay. It didn't have to get into like lead actor for Bill Murray. 1993 Best Actor is very competitive. Like Robin Williams couldn't crack Best Actor that year for Mrs. Doubtfire, even though he won a Golden Globe, even though that film came out at the end of the year and was a box office smash. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, Andy McDowell, that wasn't gonna happen. Picture director, no. But I do think Groundhog Day should have at least gotten an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. It didn't have to win, but it should have gotten in there the way it did at BAFTA. And in the category that year, even though it's a good film, I would take out Dave, another acclaimed 1993 comedy, and replace it with Groundhog Day. Number 9, The Shining. Okay, so you might know how much I love the horror film genre, and there's so many classics that didn't get in at the Oscars. Like, my favorite horror film is John Carpenter's Halloween 1978, and like, I thought about including that on this list, but like, that was never going to happen. Like, the Academy was never going to recognize a low-budget slasher film, even though Halloween should have gotten in, at least in score, right? Score would have been great. So yeah, there's like some films I can talk about in this video, like Halloween, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, that didn't get into the Oscars. But if there was a horror film from around that era that I adore with my full heart, I feel like should have gotten in somewhere at the Oscars, it's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I know at the time it wasn't super well received from critics and even audiences. It came out in May. It didn't do very well, so I get it, but like the last few movies Kubrick had made got in at the Oscars all over the place, like in picture and director and screenplay and stuff. And you look at The Shining and it's like, okay, I know it's more of a genre film. The Academy was never going to recognize The Shining in Best Picture or even Director, I would say. But why not cinematography? Why couldn't The Shining have at least gotten into cinematography? I think that would have been well-deserved. It would have been kind of a cool lone Oscar nomination for that movie, looking back now, all these decades later. And you look in the category of cinematography that year, there's at least 2, I think, you could take out. The big one is The Formula from 1980. That movie I watched once, actually recently in the last few years, and there was nothing extraordinary about the cinematography in The Formula, so I think you can easily take that out and replace it with The Shining. Number 8, Kill Bill. So I get really upset when I remember both Kill Bill movies by Quentin Tarantino received 0 Oscar nominations. Like, not even in technical categories, like nothing? Like, that makes no sense to me. I guess because they split one movie into 2, Like, the Academy didn't know what to do with those films, and they just decided to not recognize either one at all. I mean, Volume 2, I guess you could point to as, oh, that's the movie they're going to give some nominations to. But Volume 2 came out in April of 2004, so it was early in the year. Maybe if Volume 2 had come out in like December of '04, like maybe it could have been more in the awards conversation. Everybody says that Uma Thurman should have been recognized in Best Actress for those movies. I do think if that had come out as one film, Kill Bill, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, the whole thing, I think she would have been nominated for Best Actress. But again, because they split it into two, it was tricky. Now, okay, so where do we give it a nomination? I think the easy call, he got in at the Golden Globes in Best Supporting Actor. David Carradine is so monumentally great in Volume 2. He's not really in Volume 1. You just hear his voice in the first movie. So if you were going to give him an Oscar nomination for that performance, it would be for Volume 2. And because he got in at the Globes, I feel like that could have happened Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for '04. There is some wiggle room there. Like, I would take out Jamie Foxx for Collateral. I think that's a lead performance. He shouldn't even be in Supporting Actor. But I would actually take out Alan Alda for The Aviator. The Aviator got in all over the place, right? Picture, director, actor, supporting actress. It didn't need to get into supporting actor for Alda. He's fine in that movie, but I don't think there's anything great necessarily about his performance. I would take out Alan Alda and replace him with David Carradine in Kill Bill Volume 2. Number 7, John Carpenter's The Thing. So speaking of John Carpenter and Halloween, my favorite horror film ever made, you know, it's crazy to think that John Carpenter made so many classic movies. He only has one Oscar nomination to any of his films. It's for Starman, 1984, Best Actor for Jeff Bridges. Nothing else Carpenter ever directed got an Oscar nomination. I mean, that guy has at least 5 or 6 classic films, and the Academy just stayed away, right? They were like, no, we don't like you. So, I mean, he made genre films, I get it. But with the introduction in the early 1980s of Best Makeup, you'd think something he had made could have gotten into makeup, and The Thing from 1982, that would have been an inspired Oscar nomination for Best Makeup. It would have been an amazing win. I mean, I know The Thing did not do well with critics and audiences in the summer of 1982. Universal released The Thing right after E.T., and audiences at that time, they wanted nothing to do with like an evil alien entity, right? They just wanted cute E.T. for the entire summer and fall. And I think that movie was in theaters for a whole year, right? Steven Spielberg's E.T. So The Thing crashed and burned at the time. Later on, it became a classic. It's considered one of the great films, I would say, of the 80s. But at the time, people didn't really love it, so I get it. I get why it didn't get in at the Oscars. But they should have recognized the amazing makeup effects in The Thing, especially with the category so brand new, especially since the first win in the category went to a horror film, An American Werewolf in London, so they were open to awarding genre films in that category. I think we take out that year's Best Picture winner, which got into makeup. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but that doesn't need to be recognized in makeup. I would take out Gandhi in that category and replace it with The Thing. Number 6, Heat. I don't know about you, I forget about this sometimes, that Heat from 1995 by director Michael Mann, starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Val Kilmer, one of the great films of 1995, did not get a single Oscar nomination. Like, how did that happen? That movie was very well received by critics that year, and I think it did pretty well at the box office. People thought that was a great film, so it didn't have to get into picture director, it didn't have to, get into acting. But like, they couldn't find room for Heat at the Academy Awards somewhere in the technical categories, like nothing? That movie is way too strong to get 0 Oscar nominations. That feels really weird to me. It could have just gotten one, shown up somewhere once. But it feels weird. When I was looking through the list and I was like, Heat did not get anything? I had to go back and relook and I'm like, wow! Academy members, shame on you. At the very least, Heat should have gotten into Best Film Editing. The editing of that film is extraordinary. The shootouts, the dialogue scenes, that very famous scene between De Niro and Pacino, just them talking like back and forth, it's so beautifully edited. So I looked at the category for 95 film editing. I'm like, is there anything we can take out here? Babe got into film editing. Like that movie getting into picture, I still think is kind of weird, but okay. I'm not mad about it. But Babe getting into editing is kind of strange to me. What's interesting about the editing to that movie? I don't know. I guess because you have the human voices and the real animals, they think like the editing, putting it all together was an accomplishment. And I guess it was, but I think compared to Heat, it's not even a question. For film editing at the Oscars 1995, I would take out Babe in that category and replace it with Michael Mann's masterpiece, Heat. Number 5, Hereditary. Now, of course, this is the most recent film on this list. I am getting to some much older classics in a moment, but I had to put Hereditary in this list. That was my favorite film of 2018. It's a movie I think about all the time. It's so beautifully done, from the writing to the directing to the acting. Toni Collette in that movie. It's one of the great movie performances, I would say, of the last decade. It is shocking to me. Shocking. She did not do better that award season. I think she only got in at Critics' Choice and Film Independent Spirit Awards. Toni Collette for Hereditary did not get in at the Golden Globes, or at SAG, or at BAFTA, or the Oscars. I know the film is very dark and very weird. It's not your typical kind of genre film, horror movie. It goes to some very odd places in the second half. So part of me gets it, it was just too much for awards voters, even though I'm sure many recognize the power of her performance. The film is weird enough that she just couldn't break through because Hereditary wasn't getting into screenplay and director and other categories. Collette just fell through the cracks, and I get it, even though it disappoints me. But every year that follows, when I remember that Toni Collette was not recognized with an Oscar nomination for Hereditary, my heart does hurt a little bit. It's like, really? Come on. That would have been an all-timer Best Actress Oscar nomination. That would have been one of my favorite Oscar nominations of the last 30 years. I mean, Toni Collette did get in for another horror film, kind of a horror movie, The Sixth Sense, 1999, in Best Supporting Actress, and that came as kind of a surprise. She wasn't really recognized for The Sixth Sense anywhere else that award season, but she got the Oscar nomination. So, she has the one in supporting actress. Getting into lead actress for Hereditary would have been so great. It would have aged so beautifully throughout the years. So yeah, it's a bummer. I think the problem is Best Actress for 2018 was very stacked. It's not like we had only a few performances to choose from. There were a lot, right? Some that got in, some that didn't get in. Every time I look at Best Actress 2018 at the Oscars, it's hard for me to take one out. I really do love all 5 of those performances, those nominations, but if I had to remove one to put in Toni Collette, which I would do in a heartbeat, it would be Melissa McCarthy, Can You Ever Forgive Me? As much as I adore her performance in that movie, I feel like the film, it's not one of the best of the year. It's not a movie I really think about much. As a narrative, it was solid. I saw it once and I enjoyed it, but I just think Hereditary as a movie is so much better than Can You Ever Forgive Me? I would take out Melissa McCarthy there, unfortunately, sorry. I do like that performance, and replace her at the Oscars with Toni Collette for Hereditary. Number 4, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So one of the great films of the 1960s, a classic of the Western genre, Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a masterpiece. So beautifully constructed and shot and acted and edited. I mean, I watched it again a couple years ago and I quickly fell under its spell all over again. I also love Once Upon a Time in the West, the movie he made after this. Either one of those could have been a big Oscar contender, but the Academy didn't much care for Sergio Leone's work. Like, you don't see his movies nominated very much. And when it comes to the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think the genre elements of that, like the Western elements, because it was an international film maybe, like because of certain things surrounding the release of that movie and the time, I kind of get it. I kind of get why the good, the bad, and the ugly didn't get like 7 Oscar nominations. Like, it was never going to get into acting, picture and director, like it's a Western, like they recognized Westerns here and there. But in the mid-60s, I just feel like that was never going to happen. But I do think the good, the bad, and the ugly should have gotten an Oscar nomination somewhere. In a technical category, I would go with cinematography. I think if that film had one Oscar nomination, a really good one that would have aged beautifully, would have been cinematography for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I looked at the category for 1966, and you have Hawaii. Hawaii is there in cinematography. And I've looked at that movie once, and it's, it's shot fine. Like, it's not bad, but I'm like, did that deserve an Oscar nomination for cinematography? I don't think so. I think the good, the bad, and the ugly deserves to be an Oscar-nominated film. It should have gotten in for something. And so, yeah, in cinematography, I would take out Hawaii and replace it with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Number 3, King Kong. Can you believe that the original King Kong from 1933 received 0 Oscar nominations? I mean, I can't believe it. Like, that film was very popular with audiences, with critics. It's not a film that like bombed at the time and, wasn't thought of as much, and then decades later became like a cult classic, like a cult favorite or anything. People really loved King Kong in 1933. The visual effects were revolutionary, ahead of its time. And I know it's kind of a genre film, like a monster movie, you could call it. So maybe that's why the Academy just did not embrace King Kong. But I do think it's so much more than that. Like, it's a really good story, well told, good performances, beautiful cinematography, production design. It's a movie that should have been recognized somewhere, even with like a special award or something. Like, King Kong just showing up with 0 Oscar nominations for that year does feel very weird, especially all these decades later. That is one of the classic films of the 1930s. And you would think it would have gotten into something like sound maybe, or editing or something. Like, even Bride of Frankenstein from 1935 got 1 Oscar nomination. And what's really frustrating, I would say, with King Kong missing entirely is that this is the time of the Academy Awards where a ton of movies get into picture. It's not just 5, it's 10. And we couldn't make room for King Kong? That is so silly to me. I don't know what happened there. And then you look at what won for the year of King Kong, Cavalcade. Cavalcade, one of the worst wins in Best Picture in the history of the Academy Awards. I have talked about that movie in more than one video. Cavalcade is a struggle to get through. It is so dull from beginning to end. And it's like, really? That won Best Picture, but King Kong gets 0 nominations. That is a travesty, I would say. I would take out in Best Picture at the Oscars that year, the winner, Cavalcade, and replace it with King Kong. Number 2, The Searchers. Again, another all-time classic, one of the great movies of the 1950s, The Searchers. Such a beautiful story, gorgeous cinematography, great performances all the way through. The Academy loved John Ford. John Ford movies got in at the Oscars all over the place. John Ford, still to this day, holds the record for most wins at the Oscars in Best Director. He has 4. So, like, they couldn't even give him a director nomination for 1956, like, that couldn't happen for The Searchers. 1956, that's not a great year at the Oscars. That's the year Around the World in 80 Days wins Best Picture. That's also one of the worst wins in the category. So kind of like with Cavalcade, I could just take out Around the World in 80 Days and replace it with The Searchers. But I do think there is a category that The Searchers could have gotten into, even if they were, for whatever reason, going to ignore it in picture, director, the acting categories. Why is The Searchers not in Best Cinematography, Color? Like, this is the time when there's two different cinematography categories at the Oscars. You have black and white, and you have color. The Searchers is one of the most striking looking films of the 50s, and it's not even nominated in cinematography color for 1956. Like, did the Academy hate this movie that much? I don't get it. I don't understand why they gave so many John Ford movies so much attention throughout the decades, but that one they just completely ignored. It's very strange to me. And then you look at cinematography color, you look at some of the nominees, and it's like kind of a shrug, especially the Eddie Dutchin story. This movie got into cinematography color over The Searchers. Give me an effing break. The Searchers should have gotten into picture, director, acting categories, technical categories. It should have gotten like 5 to 7 nominations, I would say. That it got 0 is very strange to me. It at least should have gotten into cinematography color. I would take out the Eddie Dutchin story, a movie nobody talks about anymore, and replace it with The Searchers. And finally, that takes me to the number 1 slot. What do I think is the greatest movie ever made that got 0 Oscar nominations? This was a very easy call for me to make. My number 1 choice is City Lights. How did this incredible film, one of the best movies ever made, not get a single Oscar nomination? The Academy had a weird relationship, I would say, with Charlie Chaplin. Because like once the Academy Awards get started around 1928, 1929, the first year of the ceremony, they recognized Charlie Chaplin with a special award for his 1928 movie, The Circus. And then we move into the 30s, you have City Lights, 1931, and Modern Times, 1936. Both of those 1930s masterpieces get 0 Oscar nominations. Like, I could have also put Modern Times here, right? Like, that movie also got 0 from the Academy, and it's like, what? What did they have against Charlie Chaplin? I guess the theory is that Chaplin was reticent, right, to embrace like the new technology and film, like the talkies. He still wanted to make silent cinema in the 30s. So I think the idea is the Academy was fully embracing the talkie by 1930, I would say. And so 1931, Chaplin brings out City Lights, which is kind of like the end of an era. It really is, for the most part, a silent movie. So I guess the Academy is like, you're not going to embrace the talkie film. We are not going to give you any Oscar nominations. But it's crazy because City Lights is a masterpiece with a capital M. That is such a beautiful film from beginning to end, especially the end. I think about the ending to that movie all the time. It's so timeless. It's such a classic. It should have won Best Picture. It should have won Best Director. That it's not nominated for anything just absolutely enrages me. I don't know about you. And to make matters even worse, that's the year that Cimarron wins Best Picture at the Oscars, 1931. One of the top 2 or 3 worst movies to ever win Best Picture, Cimarron, which is like a struggle, man, a huge struggle just to get through. So yeah, I would take out in a millisecond Cimarron in Best Picture for 1931. I would replace it with City Lights, which I would have win the Best Picture Oscar.